Hello and welcome to the Poetry Exchange. I'm Michael Shaeffer and it's just me again this month. Fiona's a little bit under the weather today, so get well soon, Fee, but she will be back with us very soon. We thought it might be fun to share with you what we got up to at the Norfolk and Norwich Festival a couple of weeks ago. We were in this very beautiful Spiegel tent. It was raining heavily, 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning, and we had the most extraordinary turnout. It was really wonderful to see so many people there and to be sharing some of the highlights from Poems as Friends, our anthology. I was very privileged to be sharing the stage with Roy McFarlane, who many of you I'm sure will be familiar with from previous episodes of the podcast, and with Hannah Jane Walker, who some of you may remember from the Latitude episode that we put out a few years ago. Just to say, some of the sound may be a little bit funky in places, but not too much, and hopefully it won't spoil your enjoyment. So you'll be hearing myself and Roy and Hannah Jane sharing some of the highlights from Poems as Friends, the Poetry Exchange anthology.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome. It's really fantastic to be here and to be sharing this book with you here at the Norfolk and Norwich Festival. So this morning we're going to be sharing some highlights from the book, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined this morning by two great friends of the project. Hannah Jane Walker, multifaceted, many hat-wearing, incredible writer, performer, poet, and the incredible Roy McFarlane, an amazing poet and performer who is also the National Canal Laureate. So, Hannah, I think I'm going to ask you to kick us off, if you would.
So, Fiona was going to be reading this poem, and she's not here today, so I was asked to do it, and I was practicing it this morning backstage, and I found that when I was reading it, I couldn't quite get through it. It's a very emotional poem without my voice sort of doing that slightly breaking thing when a poem just pierces through somehow. I hope I've practiced it enough that I won't do that, because I don't want to ruin it for you, but here goes. It's called Remember, and it's by Joy Harjo. Remember the sky that you were born under. Know each of the stars' stories. Remember the moon. Know who she is. Remember the sun's birth at dawn. That is the strongest point of time. Remember sundown and the giving away tonight. Remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are evidence of her life and her mother's and hers. I did it. I'm sorry. Remember your father. He is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are. Red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth. We are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life, who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them, listen to them. They are alive poems. Remember the wind, remember her voice. She knows the origin of this universe. Remember you are all people, and all people are you. Remember you are this universe, and this universe is you. Remember all is in motion, is growing, is you. Remember language comes from this. Remember the dance language is, that life is. Remember. So that poem was chosen for this book by Rachel Eliza Griffiths, and this is her explanation of what that poem means to her. I love Joy Harjo. She's an extraordinary woman and presence and music in the world. A close friend sent me this poem as a gift when I was intensely grieving my mother's death. I've carried it on aeroplanes across state lines, different countries, continents. It became a kind of incantation. I would even dare say prayer. The poem is like a compass to me. I have it printed on little pieces of paper that I carry with me in my bag or my wallet. I'll be out somewhere or on a journey, and if things are beyond my control, I'll just take it out and hold it. This gentle command, remember. It invites meditation, daring you to recall those things that make you who you are. So it can travel with you literally, but also it travels through the arteries of your own autobiography, your own little tributaries of where you've been stuck or drowned or sailing through. Reading the poem, wherever I am, is a balm against loneliness or grief. Sometimes we get so isolated in our own experiences and we feel alone. The poem asks you to step back, think of the whole constellation, and to remember all of us are here. What can we do for each other? What can we be toward one another? I often think at the end of each day, what have I done today? What have I offered? Was there something I gave with no expectation to get anything back? Service and citizenship are very important to me because I know what it feels like to be looked at as someone who doesn't matter, someone who's at the margin. I can't control that, but I can control what I choose to give my memory to. This poem is a friend of my mind, and it is a friend of my heart.
Thank you. This next one is a poem that was selected by Andrew Scott, the actor. Some of you may know him as the hot priest from Fleabag. I did a play with Andrew some years ago now, and he agreed to come and share a poem with us. And he picked Love by George Herbert. Love bade me welcome, yet my soul drew back, guilty of dust and sin. But quick-eyed love, observing me grow slack from my first entrance in, drew nearer to me, sweetly questioning if I lacked anything. A guest, I answered, worthy to be here. Love said, you shall be he. I, the unkind, ungrateful, ah, my dear, I cannot look on thee. Love took my hand and smiling did reply, who made the eyes but I? Truth, Lord, but I have marred them. Let my shame go where it doth deserve. And know you not, says love, who bore the blame? My dear, then I will serve. You must sit down, says love, and taste my meat. So I did sit and eat. Andrew had this to say. I think it's just so beautiful. Love bade me welcome. It's the very first thing. There was no struggle to make that invitation. He simply says, welcome. And I think that's why this poem has been a friend to me. Many of us feel undeserving of love. If you don't feel like you're worthy of love, you can't access the very thing that you really need, and that's terribly sad. I associate this poem with Catholicism, which is something I feel I've escaped from. Guilt and shame are mentioned a lot. It's very poignant at the end when he says, so I did sit and eat. It expresses the idea of acceptance, of loving yourself, and I think that is the key to happiness. You can't give it out if you don't have it for yourself. All religions, I suppose, are about the attempt to get somebody to sit down, to love themselves in some way. The idea of love in its simplest form is what has allowed me, in a positive way, to reject Catholicism as a choice without denying me the right to be as kind, as loving, and as grateful as any Catholic, because my God is that word, love. During the run of Hamlet at the Almeida Theatre, the word that I said in the wings every night before I went on was love. It's a play about revenge and grief and murder, but essentially it's about people who are struggling to love each other or struggling to hate people that they actually love. I once heard someone say that the purpose of any art is to teach us how to live a better life. And to do that, you've got to love in some way. Quick-eyed love is gorgeous. This idea that if you are love, you're able in a second to see if somebody is upset or vulnerable, to see what they need.
Yeah, where do we go from there? Love thy neighbor, huh? Somehow I just think we speak about this Christian country, and the first of the most powerful commandments, love thy neighbor, we seem to forget that. Sorry. For those who know me, you know I used to be a son of a deacon. So I do get carried away, which is quite interesting, because the next one is Prayer by Carol Ann Duffy, which was a friend to Tricia Waller. This is a poem about how difficult life is and you're on your own. There are a lot of sounds in it. The bird song, piano, radio. You don't even realize it, but they're like prayers. When I was little, we lived near the railway lines, so the trains remind me of my childhood, as does the shipping forecast. Shipping forecast. Every time I read this, it just reminds me. I used to go to bed on Psalms. My mum wouldn't make me have to read a psalm every night. And also the shipping forecast. I'd fall asleep to the shipping forecast. I used to listen to that with my dad. It reminds me of being little and feeling safe. People can let you down. But these little sounds, they're constant, reliable. Stanza 3 is the part that really gets me. Someone calls a child's name as though they named their loss. I lost my first child. Where is he? I don't know. That line is calling his name. I have never been able to find him and probably never will. So that line is for him. You come through it because we're humans and we have to come through it. But of course, it's still there with you. And I know many of you understand that kind of loss. I lost my religion when I lost my child. I tried to fool myself I was okay. Nothing could touch me, but it was a lie. Carol Ann Duffy and this poem intervened. She introduced this other form of prayer, the sieve of the hands. It's such a powerful image. It captures that moment when you don't know what to do. So just cradle your head in your hands. See, this is a constant friend. I can go to this poem and know someone else sees me and their words are still there and she's still sincere enough to mean those words to me. Isn't that powerful? Huh? Oh my God, get tingles. Sorry, I'm getting excited now. Prayer. Some days, although we cannot pray, a prayer utters itself. So, a woman will lift her head from the sieve of her hands and stare at the minims sung by a tree, a sudden gift. Some nights, although we are faithless, the truth enters our hearts, that small, familiar pain. Then a man will stand stock still, hearing his youth in the distant Latin chanting of a train. Oh, pray for us now. Grade 1 piano scales console the lodger looking across a Midland town. Then dusk, and someone calls a child's name as though they named their loss. Darkness outside. Inside, the radio's prayer. Rocco, Malin, Gogger, finish there.
Oh, that's incredible. Thank you. Thank you, Roy.
Is it me next? Great. I'm going to share with you one of my very favourite performance poems, I suppose. I hate the division where people go, there's performance poetry over here and page poetry over here. But there are people who believe it exists. And this poem, I suppose, sits more in the performance end of things. It's written by the extremely wonderful Selena Godden, who is such a joy to watch in a room. I'm going to explain to you the text about why this poem's been a friend to me. It's in the section of the book called The Friend That Challenges Me. As poets, we sometimes have the great privilege of being in a room full of people like this. And we have that great privilege of asking you to listen to us for a little while. And as a writer, I try to think, what am I going to use that privilege for? I first experienced this poem at a gig with Selena delivering her words live to an audience, and it had a really strong and very immediate impact on me. Here was a poem alive in a room full of people, actively igniting hope and inspiring change. And there was a really different energy in that room that I hadn't felt personally for a long time. Everyone in the audience I could see was charged up, thinking, yes, I agree, and what are we going to do about it? I am, unfortunately, a natural pessimist, so this poem was a good challenge to me, a provocation to recognise it's not always that useful to be pessimistic. Optimism, if it translates into action, is vital right now. We need to be able to imagine ourselves out of some of the problems we've created and to see a different future. The poem reminds us that everything incrementally adds up. It embodies what hope does, how it gathers through individuals and collectives. We might be up against what seems like insurmountable challenges, but this is about a belief that our individual choices aren't futile. It's a poem that says, we are the people that we have all been waiting for, the people who can solve the problems. This poem's got fight in it. Therefore, it's a friend that challenges me. Pessimism is for lightweights. Think of those that marched this road before, and those that will march here in years to come. The road in shadow and the road in sun, the road before us and the road all done. History is watching us and what we will become. This road is all flags and milestones. Immigrant blood and sweat and tears built this city, built this country, made this road last all these years. This road is made of protest and those not permitted to vote, and those that are still fighting to speak with a boot stamping on their throat. There is power and strength in optimism, to have faith and stay true to you, because if you can look in the mirror and have belief and promise, you will share wonder in living things, beauty, dreams, books and art. Love your neighbour and be kind and have an open heart. Then you're already winning at living. You speak up, you show up and stand tall. It's silence that's complicit, it's apathy that hurts us all. Pessimism is for lightweights and there is no straight white line. It's the bumps and curves and obstacles that make this road yours and mine. Pessimism is for lightweights. This road was never easy and straight. And living is all about living alive and lively. And love will conquer hate.
Yeah. Yep.
The next poem is by Cavafy. It's called Return. Return often and take me, beloved sensation. Return and take me. When the memory of the body awakens, an old desire runs again through the blood. When the lips and the skin remember, and the hands feel as if they touch again. Return often and take me at night, when the lips and the skin remember. This poem was a friend to a man called John Davis, and it was one of the first that we did online. And we realised that we could talk to people all over the world. We didn't have to be in the same room. And we realised that modern technology exists. And it was maybe one of the first that felt like such a direct connection. And it is in the section, The Friend That Names My Experience. And it was so sort of on the money with John's experience. And I'll read to you what he said to us. I received this poem back in 1981 at the tender age of 20. The encounter was intense. I'd returned from a long trip around Europe. I was back in rainy London, and a volume of poems came through the post with this one handwritten on a separate sheet of paper. In Greece, I had met and fallen in love with the person who sent it to me. I almost wept when I read it. I experienced a rush of emotion and a longing to go back, to return, as the poem says, and to be with them, which ultimately is what I did. I've been living in Greece for 36 years now, speaking Greek and being a translator, and living with the person who was and still is very dear to me, my partner in life. That's amazing. It is a love poem, romantic, sensual. The Greeks would say it's erotic. The word erotica in Greek is specifically the love between lovers. It's full of the body. Almost all of our sensory experience crammed into 57 words. It evokes the passion of one's first experiences of love, but also has this yearning that comes from experience and age. Cavafy was 49 when he wrote it. When I read it now, it has a more melancholy tone because it's about the loss of desire. It's reaching out to youth, to intensity of feeling and emotion, and yearning for this to be revived. As a poet, Cavafy has been a friend to me. I went through a phase when I found it harder to read poetry, and Cavafy helped me to keep faith in poetry that touches my heart. We can read poetry for many reasons, but ultimately we need it to stir us into feeling and thinking. Cavafy achieves this. What more could you want from a friend? And I'm going to read it again for you. Return. Return often and take me, beloved sensation. Return and take me. When the memory of the body awakens, an old desire runs again through the blood. When the lips and the skin remember, and the hands feel as if they touch again. Return often and take me at night, when the lips and the skin remember. I think we'll take a little pause there. I thought it might be interesting to just ask these guys what your experience is of this idea of a poem as a friend and perhaps how that's resonated for you.
I didn't really have any friends growing up, to be totally honest. Lived in a small market town, and everyone was very nice, but I didn't really feel very connected to any of the kids I was at school with. And when I was about 14, an English teacher introduced Emily Dickinson, and everyone was like, I don't get it. What's it about? Like, where's all the words in between? Where's no punctuation? And I was like, I get it. I love it. And like, I would really annoy my dad by staying up really late at night. I come from a big family, waiting until everyone had gone to bed. I'd light incense my dad's really scared of fire, and a candle, and he would smell it and come in, and I'd be there reading Emily Dickinson, and he'd blow the candle out and say, "Stop it, stop doing that, Hannah." And I'd be like, "Yes, yes," and he'd go back to bed, and I'd just be like, light it again. And so I had this like little secret friend that I had at night, and it was what led me to start writing poetry, which I did secretly at night. And I didn't understand that they were poems, and I thought there must be something wrong with me, because it wasn't like the poetry we were learning at school. It certainly wasn't like Emily Dickinson's. And so I think, to be honest, embarrassingly, poems were my first proper friends. And I'm very grateful for them, because I think it taught me a lot about friendship and how to be friends with people.
Oh, it's really lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. I remember that when Fiona asked me to come on board with this, and I was just thinking, poem as a friend, what a crazy idea. You know, what's your best poem is what most people ask you. Who's the poet that you love? But poem as a friend kind of threw me off. And then I just thought about that idea of friendship. And I guess as a poet, when we write poems, we're talking out there to a friend as it gets on the page. I was just thinking while we were having this conversation, I was thinking my mum, I reckon, was the first person that introduced me to sort of the lyric sound of what poetry could be, and that's through the Psalms. And my mum would read the Psalms every night. And I recognize how my mum was so much in love with the Psalms, because whether it was David or some unknown writer, they would touch about grief, about anger, about, I don't know, why am I alone, or the Lord is my shepherd. All these things were a solace for my mom when she struggled or when things didn't go for her. And I know that she put that kind of spark in me. And so when I come to poems often to find my identity, to find more strength in who I am. And that identity could be British, could be black country, it could be an African diaspora, it could be working class, it could be the intersectionality of fighting all the injustice and social injustice. But I'm looking for somebody that will sing along with me. I'm looking for somebody that I can bounce off. I'm looking for somebody that will carry me through the next day so I can wake up the next morning. So yeah, I could go on all day. But yeah, poem as a friend, I think, is a magical, beautiful idea. And I think everyone in there, I'm sure you have got a poem as a friend. And if you haven't, go get one.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm going to ask Roy to talk to us. This is a friend that was, do you know Brian Cox, the actor from Succession? He came along and spoke to us about this poem.
I Am by John Clare. I am. Yet what I am, none cares or knows. My friends forsake me like a memory lost. I am the self-consumer of my woes. They rise and vanish in oblivious host, like shadows in love's frenzied, stifled throes. And yet I am and live. Like vapors tossed into the nothingness of scorn and noise, into the living sea of waking dreams, where there is neither sense of life or joys, but the vast shipwreck of my life's esteems. Even the dearest that I love the best are strange, nay, rather stranger than the rest. I long for scenes where men have never trod, a place where women never smiled or wept, dare to abide with my Creator, God, and sleep as I in childhood sweetly slept, untroubling and untroubled, where I lie, the grass below, above the vaulted sky. And he says, for me, the late 18th into the 19th century is one of the most exciting times in poetry, because it started to become free and to find a new urgency of expression and opinion. John Clare was a peasant, a farmer poet from Northamptonshire. He had so little, survived extreme hardship, and made this amazing work. In his 50s, he writes this poem, I Am. And when I first read it, I couldn't quite believe it had been written in 1844 because the modernity of it is so overwhelming. I think a poem like I Am simply says the human condition is very fragile. Don't forget it. And you need a pal to remind you of that. As for the poem that's been a friend to Logan Roy, it would probably be This Be the Verse by Philip Larkin. They fuck you up, your mum and dad. Yes, I think that's the sentiment he would completely understand.
Thank you.
I think this is the last poem of today, and it's the last poem of the book. I'm going to read you her explanation as to why it was chosen first, because I think it sets the poem up so beautifully. It was chosen by Jenny Woods, and the poem chosen is Mushrooms by Sylvia Plath. She says, I keep coming back to Sylvia Plath, and I never lose that first response I had as a teenager, the excitement of discovering how amazing language can be. We know a lot about her tragic history, but I think she had this wonderful playfulness, and there's such joy in her use of language that I've always found exhilarating. Through the rhythm and imagery in Mushrooms, she's captured this quiet but pressured resistance and growth, this sense of the wonder and power of people and things that are quiet and meek under the surface. These hidden lives that are actually part of the collective movement that pushes. It's the duality of that light, softness, whitely, discreetly, very quietly, that is also pushing and pushing you on in the poem. It keeps moving forward, and as you read it, you feel this quiet surge upwards. It's the masses underneath the surface, these interior lives that are all connected, all nudging and shoving and multiplying. I think that's something that you want to hear now, a sense of hope almost, but not a sentimental one. It's more real, earthy. It's the kind of poetry that stirs something in you. There will always be obstacles, and you might even be your own obstacle, but there's a way through. There's nothing glamorous here. There's a sense of domesticity, of workmanship. The mushrooms are the shelves and tables, and they're not beautiful things. There's no flourish, but there's something pleasurable in that these are the ones that inherit the earth. There's tremendous power in that repetition of so many of us, so many of us. It's like she's saying, hear it again, and I love that. It's my very small little friend who's always there, smoothing the covers, tucking me in, holding my hand. So, Mushrooms by Sylvia Plath. Overnight, very whitely, discreetly, very quietly, our toes, our noses take hold on the loam, acquire the air. Nobody sees us, stops us, betrays us. The small grains make room. Soft fists insist on heaving the needles, the leafy bedding, even the paving. Our hammers, our rams, earless and eyeless, perfectly voiceless, widen the crannies, shoulder through holes. We diet on water, on crumbs of shadow, bland-mannered, asking little or nothing. So many of us. So many of us. We are shelves, we are tables, we are meek, we are edible, nudgers and shovers in spite of ourselves. Our kind multiplies. We shall, by morning, inherit the earth, our foot's in the door.
Thank you. Nudgers and shovers in spite of ourselves. I love that. I think that's brilliant. I just want to say a huge thank you to the Norfolk and Norwich Festival, to Peggy Hughes and the National Centre for Writing for inviting us here today. It's been such a joy to share this with you. I want to say a huge thank you to Hannah Jane Walker. And to Roy McFarlane. And most of all, to you. Thank you so much.
So, I just want to say enormous thanks to everybody at the Norfolk and Norwich Festival for being so welcoming and helpful and for having us. It was really special to have the book and to be sharing it with people and seeing people respond to it. It was just so exciting, and to really feel in that immediate way how people connect to the stories of connection that people are having with these incredible poems. So thank you so much, and especially thank you to everybody that braved the elements that morning to come and see us. And just to say for our UK listeners, the Poetry Exchange anthology is available to buy from all good bookshops, and you can find some new friends, hopefully, and perhaps be reacquainted with some old ones. In fact, I have seen the Poetry Exchange anthology on the shelves of a very special bookshop, and I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the Poetry Pharmacy and Deb Almer, who is the creative force behind the Poetry Pharmacy. They now have a home in London on Oxford Street on the first floor above Lush. It describes itself as an emporium of bookish delights, literary gifts, and poetical remedies for the restoration of the self. It really is such a beautiful project. So if you are in London, I encourage you to get yourself along to the Poetry Pharmacy above Lush on Oxford Street and check it out. You can, of course, buy yourself a copy of Poems as Friends while you're there. We'll be back with you next month with more Poems as Friends. Until then, thank you for listening.